Estoy empezando. No. Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, and good morning to the brave audience that we have them at 9 a.m. here in beautiful Oslo. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for those that are online. And I know that Chris Painter is online. He's very brave. It's like 3 or 2 a.m. in Washington, D.C. Thank you, Chris, for that. So this is an open forum about cyber defense and artificial intelligence in developing economies. My name is Olga Cavalli. I am the Dean of the National Defense Faculty of Argentina. That depends and it's managed by the Ministry of Defense in Argentina. And I'm also the director of the South School of Internet Governance that has been organized since 2009 and organized in several countries in the Americas, with its 17th edition this year in beautiful Mexico City. So let me first introduce my dear colleagues and friends here in the panel. We will have José Cepeda. He's a European parliamentarian from Spain. Unfortunately, he couldn't come to Oslo for this meeting, and he was conflicted with his agenda, but he has sent us a nice video in Spanish, but it has captions in English. We have my dear friend Ram Moham. He is a Chief Strategy Officer of Identity Digital and a former ICANN board member, and you're the chair of the Security and Stability Advisory Committee of ICANN, right?
That's correct.
So you're a very, very powerful person in the panel. We have Chris Painter, my dear friend Chris Painter, former director of Global Forum on Cyber Expertise. Hi, Chris. It's so early there. You're so brave. Thank you so much for being with us today. And also, he was the first cyber ambassador of the United States at the time of President Obama. This is right, Chris, right? You were the first cyber ambassador.
I was the first, high-level cyber diplomat, exactly.
Thank you, Chris. Wolfgang will be joining us, Professor Kleinwächter, Professor Emeritus from University of Aarhus, former commissioner of the Global Commission of Stability in Cyberspace. He will join us a little bit late because he's arranging his things for his travel to home. We have my dear friend Philip Grabense. Philip is attorney and former chair of Affiliates. And we have my other dear friend, Luis Adrián Salazar. Bienvenido. He's the former ICT Minister of Costa Rica and now is professor in the Universidad Latina, ULatina, in Costa Rica, beautiful country that was host of one of our schools. Very well remembered, very nice. So let me briefly make some introduction about the issue that I've been thinking about. It's important to reflect and to share with you some thoughts. We know that artificial intelligence is bringing profound changes to many things: public management, economy, regulations. It has changed the dynamics of cyber attacks, allowing threats that previously took months to develop now are quick executed in minutes. So artificial intelligence is changing many things that we live, but also in defense. The strategic and geopolitical importance of artificial intelligence in the military sphere has a central role in the wars of the future. It can act as an advisor, collaborator, autonomous agent in conflicts, although its use poses ethical and governance challenges. We had a very interesting panel yesterday. Oh, there comes Wolfgang. Welcome. I was talking about the session that you hosted yesterday. That was very interesting. Welcome. Join us.
Sorry for being late.
I already presented you, but you're here. Thank you very much. And we were talking yesterday about autonomous weapons and how artificial intelligence is changing also that landscape. Will transform warfare by increasing the speed, precision, and autonomy of military operations, altering geopolitical dynamics, and demanding new forms of regulation and strategic preparation. Will be a strategic factor in future wars for several reasons: speed and accuracy of decision making. All processes artificial intelligence processes large volumes of data in real time, allowing commanders to make faster and more accurate decisions than humans, accelerating the chain of command and the execution of attacks. Automation and autonomy in defense and attack system, AI can operate as an advisor, collaborator, or autonomous agent on the battlefield, controlling drones, missile defense systems, and unnamed vehicles, increasing effectiveness and reducing human exposure. Shift the global strategic balance. Artificial intelligence can alter the balance of power between countries, generating risk of rapid escalation and preemptive action due to speed of reaction and perception of strategic advantage. New forms of hybrid warfare and cyber attacks. Artificial intelligence empowers faster and more sophisticated cyber attacks. Advanced operation planning. It enables a simulation of tactical scenarios to optimize attacks and defense plans. And there are ethical and governance challenges. The military use of artificial intelligence raises the need for international regulations to ensure its accountability, reliability, and governability, avoiding the risk of misuse or uncontrolled escalation. This was also discussed in the very interesting workshop that Wolfgang hosted yesterday in this same room. So the urgency of having automated response system and trained personnel is key in this new scenario. So the question is, how developing economies can face these challenges and can profit from these new advantages of artificial intelligence? So there are challenges, there are advantages. Are we creating a new divide in between countries that are very well developed in artificial intelligence and others that are lagging behind? Or maybe artificial intelligence can be used by developing economies, perhaps using them from afar online, profiting from the different systems that are online now. So first we will have a video that José Cepeda, he's a European parliamentarian from Spain, sent us. As I said before, he will not be able to be with us, not even online, because he's busy, but he sent us a very nice video. The video is in Spanish, but it has captions in English. Can we show the video, please?
Buenos días, es un placer poder dirigirme a los participantes de la edición del 2025 del Foro sobre la Gobernanza de Internet. En primer lugar, quiero mandar un afectuoso saludo a Olga Cavalí, el alma de todas estas jornadas, que me ha permitido además el que yo pueda estar hoy presente con todos ustedes, aunque sea de forma virtual. Lamentablemente me hubiera gustado estar allí, pero en esta ocasión saben la longitud en muchas ocasiones de mis obligaciones, pero sí que quiero agradecer la oportunidad de poder compartir con todos ustedes reflexiones e inquietudes. Del tema que nos ocupa, la inteligencia artificial, yo creo que la inteligencia artificial ya es un elemento estructural de la ciberseguridad. Está transformando los sistemas defensivos, automatizando la detección de amenazas, acortando los tiempos de respuesta y ampliando de una forma importante la cobertura de nuestra protección. Pero hay que reconocer que también amplifica las amenazas, haciéndolas más complejas, más escalables y sobre todo mucho más eficaces respecto a sus objetivos. Debido al impacto de la inteligencia artificial, entre otros motivos, en poco tiempo vamos a enfrentarnos a un panorama de ciberamenazas distinto, sin precedentes. En materia de ciberseguridad es crucial integrar tecnologías disruptivas como la IA, pero también abordar la criptografía postcuántica y proteger las infraestructuras críticas digitales. El escenario mundial lo estamos viendo, está cambiando de una forma muy importante, está fuertemente fragmentado. Y en multitud de países, lamentablemente, no existe hoy ninguna estrategia de ciberseguridad o de la utilización de la inteligencia artificial como ciberescudo, mucho menos una visión holística que nos permita mantener o explotar el potencial de ambas tecnologías conjuntamente. Hoy, desde aquí, desde la Unión Europea, quiero lanzaros un poco la idea en la que estamos trabajando de reconocer que los ciberataques son, sin lugar a dudas, cada vez más complejos y las tecnologías como la inteligencia artificial, la computación cuántica y el cifrado deben integrarse de una forma eficaz en todas las inversiones digitales para reforzar precisamente nuestros espacios de ciberseguridad y apoyar sobre todo y especialmente su desarrollo industrial. La Ley Europea de Inteligencia Artificial incluye requisitos explícitos de ciberseguridad para sistemas de alto riesgo. Estas obligaciones se entrelazan con directivas como la NIS2, el Acta de Ciberresiliencia o DORA, generando un gran entramado legislativo, pero coherente, que indica una visión política común de alineación entre la inteligencia artificial y la seguridad digital. Sin embargo, las amenazas digitales no conocen fronteras, por lo que la ciberseguridad y la protección de nuestras infraestructuras críticas deben ser una prioridad estratégica global. Para ello, es muy importante para nosotros hablar de cómo reforzar la cooperación internacional y avanzar hacia una ciberdefensa estratégica basada en sistemas centralizados, infraestructuras de seguridad compartidas o el uso de la IA también en la nube y en controles de seguridad integrados desde el diseño. Siempre hablamos del diseño y es que es muy importante, ¿no? En la Unión Europea impulsamos asociaciones globales, especialmente con socios que comparten nuestros valores. Estoy hablando de socios democráticos, ¿no? En foros multilaterales para impulsar una gobernanza global de Internet y de la ciberseguridad bajo marcos y valores compartidos. Sin embargo, no podemos olvidar la importancia de definir marcos regulatorios y en este sentido es muy importante también señalar la ausencia de una regulación internacional adecuada, ¿no?, frente al uso de la inteligencia artificial en materia de ciberseguridad. En los foros globales, como en el que estáis, es muy importante mencionar que debemos impulsar normas, estándares internacionales, porque al final es imposible regular la inteligencia artificial y su uso malicioso de una forma absolutamente aislada, ¿no? ¿Cómo crear mecanismos compartidos de solidaridad y respuesta conjunta a nivel global? Bien, empecemos por el intercambio de información. Es importantísimo hablar de este concepto, ¿no?, para generar confianza. El informe Ministro habla de un sistema de seguridad europea, por ejemplo, ¿no?, donde debemos reforzar el intercambio estructural de conocimientos especializados, buenas prácticas, formación en materia de resiliencia mutua, y para ello es necesario consolidar y ampliar todos estos espacios de colaboración, pero también dotarlos de medios. Hablamos también de invertir en proyectos concretos, ¿no?, como por ejemplo la creación de una red de centros regionales de resiliencia mutua. Es importante fomentar la colaboración internacional en investigación aplicada para crear proyectos conjuntos, entornos compartidos, ¿no?, sandbox y centros regionales de resiliencia, ¿no? Todo ello para generar precisamente esa confianza mutua de la que hablaba con anterioridad. Cuando hablamos de cooperación interregional debemos tener en cuenta que es muy importante integrar a países con menor desarrollo digital. En todos estos procesos de innovación contribuye de una forma muy importante para reducir esa brecha de capacidades y mejorar la seguridad global. Donde haya un espacio sin cubrir, será un espacio también para generar nuevas vulnerabilidades. Y en ese sentido, las organizaciones criminales siguen explotando la era digital, las lagunas legislativas y las vulnerabilidades fronterizas siguen siendo ese espacio a seguir trabajando todos de una forma conjunta. Por eso quiero destacar un poco esa necesidad, la de tener un enfoque unificado entre todos, ¿no? Este foro es muy importante porque intercambiar información entre socios nos debe conducir a cerrar esa brecha tecnológica y legislativa y reforzar la ciberseguridad y, por lo tanto, también proteger en nuestro último objetivo lo que más nos importa, que son nuestros ciudadanos. Así que, bueno, agradecer de una forma muy especial a Olga y a todo su equipo por la atención y el espacio que me habéis abierto para poder compartir también esta reflexión colectiva, el compromiso que representa para todos este foro, y confío que este espacio nos ayude a construir puentes duraderos entre regiones, ideas y personas, cambiando el ritmo que posiblemente se esté dando hoy en otras latitudes del mundo. Así que un cordial saludo y les deseo de verdad un debate fructífero y sobre todo útil para conseguir estos objetivos que entre todos nos hemos planteado. Muchas gracias. Un fuerte abrazo.
Gracias, José. Sé que tu equipo está viendo la transmisión en en forma virtual, así que, oh, sorry, I switched to so sorry. I was just thanking Jose for his very interesting video. He prompted me some questions that I will include in the comments that I want to share with other panelists. And also, I know that his team was going to follow the session online. So regards and thanks for the contribution, for taking the time of not only recording the video, but adding the script, which is important because we don't have translation in this room. And yeah, he prompted me some new questions that I included to the panelists. I will now to switch to my dear friend Ram. You're a very important cybersecurity expert, and what does cyber defense readiness mean in the context of an emerging digital economy? And also, I would like to ask you, how you think that developing economies could profit from using artificial intelligence systems in the cloud, not having them on site, but having them virtually accessed? How do you think that could enhance the national development of strategies and use in defense? And thank you. Welcome to the
Thank you, Olga. You're very kind. Look, in the context of an emerging digital economy that is being driven by AI, cyber defense readiness means having the comprehensive capability to understand, to anticipate, to prevent, detect, respond to, and rapidly recover from cyber threats that really could disrupt digital infrastructure, services, commerce, and governance. Our modern world is fundamentally built on internet connectivity. It is no longer just a convenience. It is an invisible infrastructure supporting nearly every aspect of our lives, from critical services to daily activities. Now, this new and evolving digital infrastructure is being driven by dramatic AI enhancements, and that requires a robust and adaptive defense posture. So what does that mean? Cyber defense readiness means you have to be able to enable critical services, because the internet underpins essential services. You look at healthcare, you look at financial transactions, transportation, energy grids, even emergency response today depends upon the internet to be up and running, right? And so a resilient cyber defense strategy will ensure that vital services are prioritized and that developing economies, the governments, have a clear set of priorities and a clear set of plans to keep those services operational. And that requires proactive monitoring, proactive prevention, because you cannot just react to these things. You know, you look at AI and look at national cybersecurity strategies. Countries have them, developing economies have national cybersecurity strategies. Most of them are useless now because AI has changed the entire nature of cybersecurity, and rapid detection and response in sectors like energy or telecom or finance or healthcare. Most of those sectors are still having plans that, for them, advanced cyber defense means they can respond in the cloud. But the cloud is now merely an enabling, amplifying factor for AI-based attack systems, right? So there's a real need to focus on going beyond rapid detection and response and being able to think about, do you have the ability to even know that the attack coming at you is AI-driven? Because AI-driven systems today can masquerade as a friendly force and do it in a way that is far more superior than it used to be, you know, when you had humans doing it. You know, when humans, say another state actor was coming at you, you could find traits of, you know, those state actors. But AI-driven systems completely understand how your local language is, or the dialect is, or, you know, and they can create images that look absolutely identical to your existing cyber defense capabilities, right? So it's a world where your existing cyber defense is going to be used against you. Can you find out that it's being used against you? Because that's what AI systems are capable of doing. And in the commercial world, it's already happening. You look at phish attacks that come through, they are so beautifully done right now. So sophisticated. Yeah. And it's not only the sophistication, it is individualized. It used to be that spear phishing was a one-off thing. You had to really work hard to know you're Olga Cavalli and I have to target you. Let me go look at your social media profile and try to write something special for you that'll trick you. AI agents can do that automatically and can do that, come at you in many different ways, right? So I think there is for developing economies, the problem that they have is one of, can they scale and can they adapt? Because AI-driven cyber attacks are scaling and adapting faster than ever before, and cyber defenses therefore also have to scale quickly, right? Because the volume is not the only problem anymore. It is now the quality is likely to get much better than before. And so you are moving from a brute force attack model to a targeted, focused, and very directed set of attacks. So the attack plane is changing, and the scale of it is also changing. One other thing that I want to point out is the AI and cyber defense, it's not so much about the technology. In my opinion, most of it is about the people and the processes. Developing economies are not prioritizing, or they need to prioritize creating a skilled workforce that not only has a security-first culture, but actually understand how to harness AI engines and AI systems in order to mount a cyber defense, right? So it's one thing to have the ability to detect, an AI-driven cyber attack, but it's another thing if your economy doesn't have the skill set to respond to it, then you're going to have a problem. However, if you're a developing economy and you as a government, as a university system, focus on that, it is an amazing engine of economic growth, because the number of people who actually understand these technologies and can harness these technologies is tremendously small. And if you're a developing economy that builds a strong base in your economy of having skilled people who understand, not just understand AI. We're not talking about creating prompt engineers. We're talking about, having people who can go multiple skill sets above that. That, I think, is a tremendous opportunity, right? Many years ago, there was this idea that you offshore the undifferentiated technical tasks, right? I think we're now in an era where, because of AI, you have a need for differentiated technical work, and only a few countries are going to develop the skills for it. The major economies, even in the major economies, in my opinion, I think the United States and China are well ahead of most other major economies. But the advantage here for a developing economy is it's primarily about knowledge and skills. If you develop that, you could actually leapfrog other developed economies and become a real force in cyber defense readiness.
Thank you, Ram. Just leapfrog concept just came to my mind when you were saying that, because sometimes when you just start from behind, but you can profit from the development of certain technologies, maybe you can capture them. So you think that human resources and training of human resources could be the key to have some value at the national level, even in countries that have other problems? What happens in developing economies is priorities sometimes capture the attention of everyone, and these problems that seem to be from other developing economies or other places are lagging behind. But then when something happens, when an attack happens, you realize that it was important to have trained people. So maybe training could be the key to solve this, a group of trained human resources.
Yeah, look, the pervasive problem is that proactive preparedness is not very attractive, doesn't attract funding, and is not sexy, right? What is more interesting is there's a huge problem, and then you rally people, you put out a fire, and nations' leaders then get on TV and get a lot of attention because they are directing the cyber defense at that point, right? But if you invest the time in training a skilled workforce, you ought to be able to anticipate these problems. And then you'll find other countries coming to you, asking you for help, and that's going to develop your local economy.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much. I would like now to move to Chris Painter. Chris, thank you again for being so early in, what time is it, 2 a.m., 3 a.m.? You're an expert in cyber diplomacy and international relations, which are the international and regional debates, spaces and fora where these issues are being discussed. And also you were involved in several training capacity building in your role in the Global Forum of Cyber Expertise. How do you see this evolving? And we were talking about this in the workshop yesterday, these different spaces where this is debated and the difficulties of having international rules or treaties to help countries to have some rules. And thank you again for being so early up with us.
Happy to join you, even though it's 3:30 in the morning here, but it's very nice to be with you all there. I wish I was there. It's very hot in DC, or will be this today when the day starts. Look, I want to build off some of the other comments, too. I mean, I certainly agree that artificial intelligence is both, as the threat, because we see criminal actors using it, increasingly using it, as was just said, but also as very much helps the defender if used correctly. And I think one of the concerns here, there's a couple concerns. One, as you said, Olga, there's many forums. There's regional forums like the OAS and this region, the Organization for American States. There's obviously the EU. There's Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. There's the OECD. There's the African Union, ASEAN, and others, and they're all debating. And certainly this is being debated in the UN. And I think, one of the challenges of all this, especially for developing economies, is just a resource issue of trying to even follow these debates. And this is true for cybersecurity more generally. We're in a couple of weeks going to be wrapping up at least this phase of what's called the Open-Ended Working Group for Cybersecurity at the UN in New York, which has been a 5-year mission, sort of like Star Trek, which is coming to a close. But one of the problems, especially for not just developing economies, but small countries, is participating in those meetings in New York, participating in the literal plethora of other meetings all around the world on every topic in around cybersecurity and more generally around digital issues is a challenge. And I think that's even more exacerbated with respect to artificial intelligence. And while I agree that artificial intelligence poses these real challenges, I worry sometimes that artificial intelligence is completely monopolizing the debate in a way that is important because we do have to debate it, and it's good to be ahead of the curve to the extent we can be. But it also means a lot of times, core cybersecurity issues, which are related and intertwined, but also somewhat different too, don't get the attention they deserve. So at a policy level, lots of governments are like, we need to do things about AI, which is true, but they're also sort of ignoring some of the basics that we've talked about for a long time and the need for cybersecurity. And I do think cybersecurity and AI, although they're intertwined, will both be important. AI certainly could be a real benefit. Right now, I think the biggest benefit of AI is just making sense of the giant mass of data for system administrators and defenders to more prioritize different threats. And in the future, it certainly will offer a lot more. So I do worry about that deprioritization of some of the basics of cybersecurity. You need to do both. The other thing I worry about, particularly for developing economies, and this is said by others, is that you know, uh, uh, just like in cybersecurity, a lot of the countries who are developing don't have the resources to do what they need to do in cybersecurity, including policy. And I do think a lot of countries now have cyber strategies. I don't think they're completely obsolete now, so I disagree with you a bit with our last speaker. But I think that that's good. Those are roadmaps, so we worked for many years to get that to happen. But a lot of countries still don't have national level certs. They don't, computer emergency response teams. They don't have really trained law enforcement. They don't have trained technical people. They don't have policies within their government that integrate this with some of the digital and other areas. And that's, I think, a continued problem because it needs to get the political attention with every country, whether it's developing or not. And I think that the rationale for that, the strongest one, is that if every country around the world, which is true, including developing economies most particularly, are trying to maximize digitization, catch this digital transformation, which includes AI, that's great to help their economies and their people, but cybersecurity is still an important plank of that. So I think that will be important too, and I worry about developing economies being left even further behind, and then creating a larger digital divide. Where if you have this very specialized area of AI that they don't have, and this is building on what you just said, Olga, too. If they don't have that ability, they don't have that trained workforce to work in this area. If they don't have the investment in these issues, not that every country has to be a leader in artificial intelligence itself and development, but they need to be able to take advantage of this as a resource and also be able to appreciate what the threat is and frankly work with countries. And I think that's always important. So, on that, looking at that kind of framework, I think there's a lot of things we need to do, both in international and regional forums, but also most importantly around capacity building to help address this issue and not wait till the end. So, as I said, I think there's training. I think others have talked about training, and that training is both at a technical level, so people understand the technology and how to use it, but it's also at the policy level so that diplomats and others can debate these issues in these different forums intelligently. And really, I think this is not just a debate it's clearly not just a debate for the large countries, it's a debate for every country as we move forward. So I think that's important. The Global Forum on Cyber Expertise, which has been around now almost, actually exactly 10 years, has expanded significantly, having over 225, I think, members and partners around the world in every region of the world. And one of the, it has several working groups on national strategies, on incident response, on cybercrime. But most recently, in about the last year, there was a working group added on AI and emerging technologies more generally. And I think that's really important. And what that's trying to do is both coordinate and promote better capacity building around this among a multi-stakeholder community, which includes governments, private sector, and civil society. I do think this is an urgent issue for capacity building. I worry about that more generally because in the era where there's increasingly cut funding by governments and others, including the U.S., where capacity building is not being emphasized as much, that I think it causes a problem for all these countries who desperately need this help. And I think that's the number one thing I see when I go to the UN, is a lot of countries are glad to debate these issues, but really need the help, both the technical help and the policy help and the training help. And I think we can't forget that. So as I look at this, I think it's going to be. I suspect we'll have this debate every year for a few years now, because it's one of these evergreen things that's going to continue to evolve. But I do worry about, I love the promise of AI, but I do worry about not just the threat, but the potential of AI making it much more difficult for countries to achieve the things they need to achieve because they don't have the resources or priority to do that. And we need to address that all of us need to address it, not just now, but in the future.
Thank you, Chris. I do agree with you, but I'm always optimistic, and I got the concept of leapfrog from Ram, and it was in my mind as well. So
I mean,
let's be positive. But I also have the fear of this this divide among different countries. I would like now to give the floor to my dear friend Wolfgang Kleinwächter. You're an expert in capacity building. We have been saying that having the capacity in human resources dealing with these issues is fundamental. How do you think this can be handled by developing countries, and also which kind of talents we should develop at the national level? Perhaps to have a group of experts. And one of the challenges is when you train them, they go to work to the private sector very quickly because they get more money, which is understandable if you're young and you want to develop your career. How you retain them at the state, for example, working for national organizations or governments, and welcome.
Thank you very much, Olga, and certainly knowledge is key, and knowledge can be shared. So that means the whole internet development has based on the principle of sharing. So sharing a resource that was, a limited resource was at the beginning of the internet in the 1970s. You shared computers and, to make it work. And while you need certainly money, but knowledge, if it's available, so it doesn't cost. So it's a question also of readiness to share the knowledge. If somebody has the knowledge, is he ready to share this, without any additional costs? So that's a general problem, and this leads a little bit to the political problem behind the discussion we have here. 20 years ago, when business started, the driving force behind that was not internet governance, it was the digital divide. Because we did see with the development of the internet, we see have and have-nots, and insofar the United Nations realized that they have to do something additionally to what the G7 decided in 2000 in Okinawa, where they had the .4 and said, we have to bridge the digital divide. The G7 called it we have to turn it into digital opportunities, from digital divide to have a positive language. Digital divide is negative. So into digital opportunities. And then we had the business. If I take these experiences now in today's world, 20 years later, I see basically we have the same problem today. So it's not the digital divide, it's the AI divide. If you remember the speech by the Minister of Communication from Saudi Arabia last year in Riyadh, in the opening speech, he had made this very clear, about the AI divide, the skills divide, and all this. And insofar, 20 years of development of business has moved the problem, has not solved the problem, but moved it to a higher level. And if you say, use what just Chris has said, that cybersecurity is part of the national security. And if we agree that, to be safe in the internet governance ecosystem, you need the skills and you need the knowledge, then you could argue at the end of the day, the AI divide leads to a security divide, so a security gap. So that means if cybersecurity is national security, and if you have different capacities, then, at the end of the day, some countries are less secure because they do not have the capabilities as others. So I think that's a dilemma, but we should face it and should make clear the only way forward is then to find a certain agreement. And this brings me to the question of regulation. This will be my final point. So I think the basic idea of the United Nations 80 years ago was that all states are equal. Big states, small states should have the equal rights. The principle of sovereign equality of states is the cornerstone of the Charter of the United Nations. So, and if you translate this into today's world, then we have to have safeguards. The law always protects the weak partners, the small partners. So, with other words, so we have to look for certain arrangements which are based on the philosophy of sharing, which I mentioned in the beginning, but leads to the concept of, let's say, equality or equal rights in this field. So we have certain discussions on it about projects to regulate this. So I'm very skeptical, and we have this discussion also with Chris over a couple of years, and I share his skepticism that it's very difficult, to find a legally binding instrument to regulate AI weapons or to regulate AI in general. So we did see the efforts of the European Union to regulate it with this risk-based approach, and after 2 years we realized the idea was probably not so bad, but the implementation is very difficult. You have to create a big bureaucracy to identify, what is the risk application, and then to evaluate this. We did see the efforts in the Council of Europe, where they have now a legally binding convention to, respect human rights if you develop AI. This is also helpful, but it has to be seen, how this works in practice. If it comes to defense and weapon systems, we have since 10 years negotiations on a less autonomous weapon system where even after 10 years we have no clear definition what it is. So we feel, everybody feels it, that something has to be done. We cannot delegate the question of life or death to a machine. So I think the human control is in the center, but how you organize the human control. If you get, as a soldier, a recommendation from a computer and says, now you have to push the button, certainly there is human control, and there's a human in between, but what you can do in a difficult situation. So finally, human control is a good concept, but in reality, in a battle situation, it's very difficult to have this reflection about, is this the right recommendation which comes from the computer? Should I stop here or not? I think we have similar situation in the history of nuclear weapons. We all know this story from Mr. Pavlov when he was in the submarine and said, this is the wrong information. I should not push the button. So he avoided the nuclear war. It was in the early 1980s. I think a lot of people will remember this story. So insofern, debate, discussion, driven by the spirit of sharing, driven by the spirit of equal rights for everybody, is for the time being the way forward. Probably the next generation has better ideas, so let's wait for the next generation. Thank you.
Thanks to you. Yeah, I'm always optimistic, especially in younger generations. And the challenge is there. But when we talk about it, there are some ideas that come up, and we can think about possible ways of not solving all the problems, but address them somehow. Thank you very much, Wolfgang. Very, very interesting, as usual, your interventions. Philippe, you're an attorney, and also you have been leader of very important technology companies, especially related with the internet. Which policies do you think that governments and development countries should develop in order to harness all this potential AI and also the challenges of AI? We have seen that it's not easy. They have, as Chris and Wolfgang already mentioned, they have been years discussing about cybersecurity, international treaties, and it's very difficult. But how do you think this could be addressed or handled by policies? How those policies could be developed?
Thank you, Olga.
I think, this session, follows up on the session we had in Riyadh, and I think we all agreed that the bottleneck is really human capacity and human resources. We all agreed on that. And I think, in this session, I pointed out, and in agreement with everyone, so what can governments and what can policy do? I think to create environment and create funding, very simple, to develop those human resources and makes it attractive for those human resources to get developed and to grow in the country. Create economic opportunities, establish maybe, the problem you addressed, that people go to private companies, so establish public-private partnerships, so it's not either government or companies, private sectors, maybe some combinations. So that's all, that's really what countries can do, in the policy, which might have a direct effect. I mean, there are a lot of theoretic things and policies, new laws for regulating and all that, but this comes too late. I think it's all, the only thing which has a really big practical impact is developing, setting a framework to develop human capacities. Now artificial intelligence comes, that's new. Compared to the other sessions we had. So what does it mean for us? So, and I pretty much, unfortunately, I share Chris, somehow concerns or pessimism, because we have one big problem. To a certain extent, AI might help a little bit to solve the capacity problem, because some of things which you need, I mean, you still need people who run the AI and all that. But still, maybe some of tasks which are, done by skilled humans can be in the future taken over by AI. But the big problem of the digital divide is now, and that makes, in my view, probably the digital divide even bigger now. You need access to the large language models. And we have only, so far, we have China and US who have, in those countries have companies and to run those large language models. And to develop an autonomous cyber defense mechanism, you need access to those large language models. I think you should not get into, even middle powers. I'm not even talking about developing countries. I think even middle powers, for them it's too late to enter the race to compete with those large language models. The race is over. Maybe some, I discussed it yesterday with Ron, maybe Singapore, maybe some others, with a lot of funding will develop also large language models, but that's to be questioned. But definitely, developing countries will not be able to develop those large language models. And so they need to make sure they have access to those large language models. So what can policy do to, grant this access or to help this access? So they can, first of all, create and that's again, a long shot again, to create an economic environment which makes it attractive for the large companies to go in those economies and make money, with offering those people access to the large language. So the economic incentive to create environment which makes it attractive for countries to, for the big companies to give access to them, economic access to their large language models, so they can make money in those developing countries by giving them access, because there need to be applications in those countries developed which can connect to the large language models and enable to make money. But in cyber defense, cybersecurity, is there so much money? So what is the leverage of countries, developing countries, to make sure they get access in their cyber defense environment to those large language models? Mm-hmm. And I believe they have to, and this is, I know this is not very popular, but this is the real world now, and they have to cut deals. So their foreign policy have to be fast to cutting deals, offer, and it's probably, as per now, the US or China, offer them deals, strategic advantages, trade in something with those nations and with those companies, that they, trade something, cut deals with them, so they grant them access to their large language models. Because US has more funding, in the US as more funding goes, government funding goes into the large language models, the less inclined, the US government will be to share those merits of their large language models if they don't get something in return. So I think, you know, this is, as sad as this might be, you don't have time for many conferences. You have time for this whole framework. You have to be fast now on foreign policy, and because it's not a matter of years, you know, it develops so fast. So you need access right now, and you need grant access right now. So foreign policy has to cut deals and make sure they're in a position that is attractive for the very countries they talk to, that this grants them access to their to their artificial intelligence capacities. And that's, you know, my suggestion. And if this is not, if they don't cut, and it's already, the digital divide is much bigger than, I think, probably than ever, with 2 countries having those large language models, and everyone in the world depends on them. But because how can you fight a cyber attack which comes out of a large language model if you don't defend it out of one of the comparable or maybe even out of the same model, right? You have no chance. So that's what the situation is right now. And let's see how it goes.
Let's see how it goes. Very good ideas. And based on knowledge sharing and information sharing, that's some concept that has been addressed by several of you. And now I would like to go to my new friend, Luis Adrián Salazar. We were friends from, I don't know if we met in Costa Rica. I don't know.
I think that someday we met.
I feel that we are longtime friends, but I have just met.
This is the most important thing. Yeah, that's you feel that we have a lot of time to be friends.
He was the former ICT minister of Costa Rica, and now is a professor at a very dear university for us, Universidad Latina. And Luis, Costa Rica is a country without army. What happens if you have attack to the country? How do you define or do you defend? Because it's a new way of attacking countries, like with technology. How you see that situation? How did you handle the big ransom that you experienced some years ago? And
thank you. We abolished the army since 1948. And we don't use never the word army because it's not part of our ideology by a country. However, in 22, we received a fatal attack, a cyber attack, which affect the financial area, the security, the social security area, the hospitals, and we realized that we had to do something. I recognize that since this year, and we'll be in a very interesting point of the government history, because the last government was in the last 2 weeks, and the next government started 2 weeks late. So it was very chaotic. However, I recognize to the current government all the effort in order to improve the CECIR, to improve the capacity to work with other countries, because my colleagues had talking about one thing that is, for me, the most important thing in this area, and this is the understanding. Sometimes the governments don't understand what is happening now. And when I talk about that, it's about the digital world, because I am an engineer. However, I am former minister of the science, technology, and telecommunication in Costa Rica. And when we go to the government, to the different areas of the government, to talk about that you require budget, research, people, technology, for improve the life of the people, because there are where we forget what is the mean, what is the principle that my colleague talked about, sharing, about to work together, that we forget. And my opinion is that at this time, the cyber diplomacy is a way to collaborate, to cooperate, to try to understand the scale, scope, and speed that the technology are changing. And it's very important that we talk about infrastructure. It's very important that we talk about all that we need to increase in capacities, to improve the capacity of the people to help in this area. However, when we talk about put the human being in the center of the equation, it's that you understand that when we receive an attack, we are affecting the health, we are affecting the education, we are affecting the countries which receive attack on missiles. So I think that we have an opportunity, and I really love this kind of conversation, because I believe that we need to create a roadmap, but a roadmap with a specific results, a concrete results where developing countries are not thinking about artificial intelligence, are not thinking about quantum computer. They are thinking about how reduce the poverty, how increase the access to the water. So when we combine the real world, the human needs with the technology, you find the real goals and real principles that we have to are working, or that we must to work for solvent. For finish, I think that we must to create a group in order to talk about this specific thing, because when you try to translate from the politic word and politic language to the technical, are a gap. And the most risk thing is that we have a gap, or a gap of gaps. We have a lot of gaps. And all of those are increasing for the digital gap. So I be optimistic, and I think that if we are still working together, we can have a better future for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. We are running out of time. We have 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that knowledge sharing, information sharing, working with foreign affairs to have this, I like this idea of having the deals with important countries that have more technology. And I am also feared of this big gap in between 2 main countries and all the rest, especially for developing economies. And I think you mentioned very rightly the priorities in developing economies are always others. It's not technology, but then technology affects what is happening at the national level. So thank you all very much. Thank you, Chris, for being so early up with us, and I hope to meet you somewhere in the world in the near future. Thank you very much. Thank you, Philippe. Thank you, Ram. Thank you, Luis. Thank you, Wolfgang. And thank you, Karina, for being my remote moderator. Apologies for the audience. We don't have much time. And I ask you a big applause for our dear colleagues.